so I spoke with Louise, and we decided to make a video interview. And the first actually request would be for you to introduce yourself, because I already know you and I can't actually say anything that would be so interesting about yourself that when you explained about the whole thing about you as an author and the whole story of being an expat and all of that.
Okay, thanks, Andy. I can do that. So yes, I'm the author of 2 books, Women Who Walk, How 20 Women from 16 Countries Came to Live in Portugal, and its sequel, or the companion read, The Winding Road to Portugal, 20 Men from 11 Countries Share Their Stories, and Andy is one of the interviewees in this book. And I began the first book, Women Who Walk, when about a year after I arrived in Portugal, I got involved in an organisation called International Women in Portugal. And I was on their board up until just recently, actually, so for about 5 years. And it was through that organisation that I was meeting a lot of international women who'd moved country to country en route to a life here. And I was pretty blown away by the stories that the women were sharing with me. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and record these stories because for posterity, really, and perhaps for the historical archives or the Portuguese historical archives. I just thought that they were really worth recording. And then once I'd released the women's book, of course, people ask you, well, what are you going to write next? And many asked, would you write the men's story? And that's what I did. So I set about to write the men's stories.
Yeah, and we are going to actually speak more about the sequel, so about the men's story. Let me ask you the first question. I would like to know what compels the average guy to move to Portugal.
Yeah. Well, look, there was a myriad of reasons that the guys shared with me, but there were several of them that came here to escape very difficult circumstances in their country, perhaps hostile situations, and some just for the sunny climate of beautiful Portugal, and others for just a complete change of lifestyle. 2, because their wives' work relocated them to Lisbon, and in fact you happen to be one of those guys, Andy. And several because they're digital nomads, that guys that are able to, or digital nomads are people who are able to work from any country in the world on their computer, and those digital nomads chose Portugal.
Yeah, so one off topic here. Let me say one thing. It's raining here. I'm in the Algarve and it's raining, so
yeah, it is
not every day we can experience sun actually. So in general, what did your interviewees search for or find at the end in Portugal?
Well, I guess most a lifestyle change. Many just commented favourably on the weather. I mean, if you're coming from Northern Europe, for instance, or Poland, where you came from, the weather here generally is very mild winters and very sunny, and the gentler pace of life. I mean, a couple came from big cities, very hectic lifestyle, very demanding careers, and they found a much gentler pace here in Portugal. And the safety, I mean, I think, everyone in the international community that I know just remarks about how safe they feel here. The affordable cost of living, and of course the amazing wine.
Sure thing. Yeah, but there was a difficult time for everyone. Living abroad, it was it was in spring during the first lockdown. We are still experiencing some consequences of the lockdown, and we are still in this COVID reality, new normal. like someone would probably describe it. What did they feel during this time? Did they say anything about it?
Yeah. Well, look, of the 20 men, only 3 are single, and the others are either married or in stable relationships. Some have families. So this meant that during that extreme lockdown we had during the spring, most of the guys had the support of a partner, a spouse, or their family. And like most of us, this year, I think we've all become really adept with technology and using technology as a means to reach out to people, family, friends outside of our home, outside of the country. So, like WhatsApp and Zoom and all the other platforms that we use these days. But at least half the guys, their work involves tourism, working in tourism here in Portugal. So they were really impacted financially by the quarantine because their work was pretty much devastated. So it's been a particularly tough time, continues to be for a number of the guys. The youngest interviewee actually got COVID and he recovered from that at home with the help of the public healthcare system here and some of his friends. He's one of the single guys, but he's also one of the digital nomads. So, he's kind of used to, I suppose, being on his own and, working at a distance. So he was very much dependent on technology to help him through his recovery and continues to be dependent on it for his social connections as we continue to be in this kind of period of social distancing and so on.
Yeah. Can you tell me if there was any man that praised Portugal for its smart approach to, handling the crisis related to the coronavirus?
Yeah. None of the guys really commented on Portugal's approach to the crisis. I think, they're all wrapped up in their own personal crises, particularly when you don't have any work and there's just no income. So I think the emotional and psychological impact of dealing with the restrictions of quarantining and how to jumpstart your work and your career was challenging enough. And as I mentioned, Colin, the interviewee that did have COVID, he said incredibly positive things about the care that he received via the healthcare system, the public healthcare system here. But many of the guys did mention that they were so glad that they were here in Portugal during this time because, the Portuguese have followed protocol really well. Nobody's reactionary to having to wear masks or the various curfews that we've been subject to. Yeah.
Yes. From what I know, there is one man or more men that decided already to leave Portugal. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. Only one of the guys has left, and that was for love. After he moved here, he's American. He was living in Brazil. He moved to Portugal. He lived just outside of Lisbon on the coastline for about 6 years.
All right.
And then in December 2019, he moved to Italy, where his Italian girlfriend lives. And they've actually just had a baby. So little baby was conceived just prior to the really strict lockdown that Italy went through. But his life changed dramatically. He's a travel writer for Lonely Planet. Obviously, he's not really doing a whole lot of travel for Lonely Planet at the moment. He's doing some online articles for them, I think. But at the moment, his primary role is being a dad.
Very well, very well. So good luck for him. Okay, so there is this book, The Winding Road to Portugal. There is Woman Who Walk, and you interviewed men, 20 men, and 20 women as well, right? So
Yep.
2020. Were there any differences interviewing the men versus the women?
Yeah, there were. The actual interview process was the same. I met with each of the interviewees for about 2 hours, and I recorded your stories on my iPhone, and then I wrote up each of your stories into a sort of a mini memoir, and including your country-to-country journey on route to a life here into Portugal. But of course, the path that men and women take through life it's different, and so I cover those gender differences in the introduction to the winding road. But just briefly, I guess one example is that the men tended to focus more on their work journey, the evolution or the journey of their work and career, and on getting ahead in life. And for some, that meant providing for or wanting to provide for their partner and family, if they had one, or even if they were planning on having one. They're already sort of thinking ahead about wanting to be a provider. But not that the women were any less focused on their work or their career, because they did talk about their education, their career, and so on. But their stories just tended to be more holistic. They covered a wider range of topics when they talked about their personal journey.
Interesting. I calculated that, and I might be wrong, but I think it took you longer to complete Women Who Walk compared to the Winding Road to Portugal.
You're right.
Right?
Yes. It took about 3 years to write the women's book, and that's because, as I mentioned earlier on, I was very involved on the board with International Women in Portugal, and it was basically a full-time job, and so I was kind of writing when I had the time, and I didn't have a lot of time. But by the 3rd year, I was just really determined. I just needed to get it done and off my desk, and so I did finish it in 2018, and then I turned my attention to writing the men's book in the spring of 2019, and then I had minimal demands on my time that year, and I also knew what was involved in writing a book like this, so I could kind of move through it faster.
I understand. I also know that some of your male interviewees elected by yourself decided not to participate in the book. So were there any different reason, or was it one reason, common reason for that?
Right, there are a number of reasons, and you're right. There are about 10 men that I approached that that didn't want to participate, and their reasons were varied. One man mentioned tough times living in a country where he was very unhappy, inferring that in fact he'd been suicidal, and my sense was that he was both fearful and shameful of the depth of his despair. And another man is gay, and he feared persecution should his story somehow find its way back to his country of origin, and not even the use of a pseudonym allayed his fears. Another's work was of a very sensitive nature, and because it had been his life, he felt he had nothing to share. If he couldn't talk about his work, then he felt he had nothing to say, which was very concerning to me. Yet another guy, he was a young guy, he had created a business persona, and a business persona of success, and he was afraid that if he told the truth of his life, that it would blow his chances of attracting new clients. I talked to all of these guys a couple of times, and I realized there was no point me trying to persuade them to share their stories, because they were pretty clear that for all these reasons that they didn't want to participate. So that to me, the guys then that did participate really showed an enormous amount of courage in sharing their stories.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's speak about your time living in the States. You studied psychology and counseling, and you were practicing for some time as a psychotherapist as well. So I was wondering, do you think sharing details of their lives was somehow therapeutic to your interviewees?
Yeah, that's a good question. And yes, I lived in the US before I moved to Portugal, and I had practiced for a short period of time as a psychotherapist, but ultimately I had a very eclectic career as an entrepreneur in the US. But nevertheless, with that background in psychology and counseling, I think it was probably helpful when I interviewed the men. Just because I think I have this skill of being able to create a pretty comfortable and safe environment for people to share, and I know I'm a very attentive listener, focused and attentive listener, and so one is really able to build trust through the power of attentive listening, and I do think that allowed each of the interviewees to feel comfortable sharing, and often sharing really emotionally complex and complicated aspects of their life. And but it certainly wasn't my intention to play therapist at all, and I didn't. But I do find that people are very comfortable generally opening up to me because perhaps of my background or my training.
Yeah, I can confirm that, I guess. Okay, we are very, very, very good in time, I guess, but we are running out of time already. And I want to say that after reading this one, here it is. I only want to know. Yeah, the first one I'm still reading. This first one, so I started with this one. I didn't actually read my story, because I already know this one. So yeah, but now I want to know what will be the next book about and when will we have it?
Right. Well, of course, that is what people ask you when you finished one book, but it's a really interesting process promoting the men's book, because I can't do in-person presentations and book signings and so on. So it was released in August. So the last few months, I've been having to learn how to use all my social media platforms to promote the book. And the learning curve has been steep for me, but that's what I'm doing, and that's my focus, and that will continue to be my focus, because so long as we're limited as a result of COVID and the curfews that we're all subject to, I can't go out and talk about the book. So I'm doing things like these interviews and Instagram and Facebook and Amazon. I have an author's page on Amazon, on Goodreads, on Love Reading, where the book was nominated as Indie Books We Love. In fact, both the books were nominated on lovereading.co.uk. Trip Fiction is another site. So yeah, I found all these various sites online where I can post the book and promote the book, and that's taking up all my time. So I'm not thinking about writing another book right now.
All right, so what can I say more? I wish you very good luck with promoting this one. Oh, here it is.
There it is.
With promoting this one, and I'm already curious about the next one, but for now, let's focus on sharing the idea and the message about the Wind the Road to Portugal.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me. And yeah,
thanks, Andy.
once again, very, 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 very good luck with your work, with your reading, with your writing and reading as well.
Okay. Thanks, Andy. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.